merchant ship comes sailing into port, for jolly tar with joy will sing out a land ahoy. With his pockets full of money and a parrot on the cage, he smiles at all the pretty girls upon the landing stage. All the nice girls love a sailor, all the nice girls love a tar. For there's something about a sailor, well, you know what sailors are. Light and breezy, free and easy, he's a lady's pride and joy. Fall in love with Kate and Jane, then he's off to sea again. Ship ahoy, ship ahoy. All the nice girls love a sailor, all the nice girls love a tar. For there's something about a sailor, well, you know what sailors are. Bright and breezy, free and easy, he's the lady's pride and joy. Falls in love with Kate and Jane, then he's off to sea again. Ship ahoy, ship ahoy.
Hello everybody. In January 2020, just before lockdown, I had the opportunity of making a presentation to the Cape Town Family History Society, which I entitled All the Nice Girls Love a Sailor. Someone asked if I had this on a podcast, so I decided to give this a go and see how it would work. The Church of St. Francis Assisi, Simonstown, on its web page has a way of contacting the parish. As acting priest in charge, I received an email from the UK asking about marriages that took place in Simonstown. My correspondent wanted to know if South African wedding registers captured the bride and the groom's father's name and occupation, as it happens in the UK. As you can see by this example of one of my wife's ancestors, you'll see James Charles Jones is listed, his father is listed as John Jones, a herbalist, and Mary Roach is listed having her father being a carpenter. And yet if you look at Cape Colonial marriages, I know this is well after the colony, but during Union, you'll see my father and mother's marriage in 1943. There's absolutely no parents' names appearing on the marriage register. But I did a search of our marriage register at St. Francis and found on Family Search the marriage register of a Robert Rouse marrying a Wilhelmina Hendrika Napier. It's interesting, when she signed her name, she signed it Henrietta rather than Hendrika, so I'm not quite sure what the minister was writing down when he wrote it. But they were listed as bachelor and spinster, and the groom is listed as being a quartermaster of HMS Flora, and both coming from Simonstown. They were both of full age. I found a picture through someone who contacted me later of Wilhelmina Henrietta Napier. I don't unfortunately have a picture of Robert Rouse, but here's what a sailor would have been wearing at that time. My correspondent from the UK informed me that he had found 2 children born to this couple in Simonstown. The first was Richard Charles, born on the 11th of July 1883, and the second was Edwin John Rouse, born in January 1885. Still looking for a Robert Rouse in Simonstown, I found this cemetery card on Family Search, and it's from the old Seaforth Cemetery. And here you see Rouse Robert William, died on the 4th of July 1889, but his age is only 8. And the relationship, of course, is blacked out as on all Family Search records. I then found him in the St. Francis funeral register, but unfortunately burial registers don't have any further details besides the person's name and where he comes from, in this case Simonstown obviously, the day when he was buried, and his age, 7 years. But I had found no child being baptized with the surname Rouse in 1881, before Robert and Wilhelmina were married. And so I searched for Robert William Napier, Wilhelmina's maiden name, and sure enough, I found a entry in the baptism register at St. Francis for the 15th of March, giving the birth of the child on the 17th of December 1884, Wilhelmina Henrietta Napier. Notice no father's name is given there. Was it Robert Rouse, the person I was looking for? Now, while searching for more on this family, I found a death notice for Richard Charles Rouse. He, of course, is one of the children that the correspondent in England had found. He, in fact, died on the 23rd of November 1915. The death notice was completed on the 29th of June 1916, nearly a year later. It was signed by V. Castle, sister of the deceased, in whose home the death occurred, it says. But that suddenly struck me. What sister? Because he was unmarried, they list all the brothers and sisters on the death notice, or should I say the surviving brothers and sisters on the death notice. And there it says, Edwin James Rouse, Violet Ann Castle, born Rouse, married, in community to Charles Castle. The father died many years ago, it says. Mother still living, address 7 Denner Court, 59 New Street, Cape Town. But I was still concerned. What sister? Who is this sister? Where did she come from? When was she born? Once again I found nothing under Rouse, and so once again I tried under Napier. And there I found Violet Ann Napier, mother Wilhelmina, born in Simonstown on the 29th of December 1878, baptized January the 19th, 1879. So far there are 2 children born out of wedlock, but both took the surname Rouse. Looking for Wilhelmina Rouse, I came across this baptism. Lucy Henrietta, born the 8th of February 1888, baptized 28th of March 1888, child of William Jawson and Wilhelmina Rouse. Now, here mother is entered as Wilhelmina Rouse and father as William Jawson. My immediate thought was, isn't it a bit cheeky to be married, but to have a child from another man and place his name in the baptism register? All this is very confusing. So now let me give you a list of the whole family that I've found so far. The children that Wilhelmina Rouse, born Napier, had borne up to this time are 1. Violet Ann Napier, born the 29th of December 1878. But she calls herself Rouse and she marries a Charles Castle. Secondly, Robert William Rouse, born 11th of December 1881, and he died on the 5th of July 1889 and was buried in the Seaforth Cemetery on the 6th of July. On the burial card and in the burial register, his surname is given as Rouse. Thirdly, Richard Charles Rouse, born the 11th of July 1883. He died November 1916. Edwin John Rouse, born the 24th of January 1885, called Edward James by his sister Violet on Richard's death notice, however. And then Lucy Henrietta Rouse, born 8th of February 1888, and his father is given as William Jawson. And this is where a sailor with a girl in every port comes in, or all the nice girls love a sailor. So let's look at Robert Rouse, the father. Robert Rouse was born in Plympton St Mary in Devonshire on the 25th of October 1857 and baptised on the 29th of November, son of Robert and Susan Rouse from Underwood Farm, where he's listed as a labourer. He appears later in 2 census records. By this time, Robert Rouse's father Robert Rouse, had become a worker on for the railway company. 1861, they're living in 4 Street, St Germans, Cornwall. Robert, with his wife Mary, and 3 sons, Richard, Robert, our man of interest, and Charles, who were 7, 3, and recently born. The 1871 census, they're living at Menoit Station in Liskeard in Cornwall. Robert Rouse and his wife Susan, and also listed there is Robert, Charles, William, and Mary, the oldest daughter. Robert Rouse, the person we're interested in, is 13 and is a farm labourer. On the 7th of December 1871, Robert enlisted as a boy sailor in the Royal Navy. Now, either he didn't know his year of birth, or he lied, which I suspect, in order to get into the Royal Navy, as he gives his date of birth as the 25th of October 1856, not 1857, and he sticks to this year for the rest of his life. He needed his parents' permission and to be 16 years of age in order to enter the Navy. And you can see a copy of his apprentice form signed by himself, with that very decorative signature, and by his father. I then went to the National Archives and drew his service record. At that stage I had to pay £3.50 for those records, but during lockdown those files can be drawn without any expense, and you can get a PDF copy. They're not in the sharpest picture, but they're certainly adequate to read. And I was particularly interested to have a look at these records because my father joined the Royal Navy in 1937, and my mother's paternal family came from Portsmouth, so I was very interested to see the service record for this rating. You'll notice it gives his name at the top and his date of birth, still a year incorrect, but obviously, as I say, he stuck to that date of birth, 56 and not 1856, not 1857. You'll show the time he joined up. This actually gives the time he signed down as an adult of 18 years in 1874, and he has to serve for 10 years. So he will complete his service on the 6th of January 1885. He starts off as being 5 foot 2 1/4 inches, and you can see he grows by 3 inches, and then finally 5 foot 6. He has dark brown hair, grey eyes, fresh complexion with no scars. His previous occupation was labourer. And then below that is a list of all the ships that he served on, the first one being the Impregnable. Robert Rouse served on the school ship for boys, HMS Impregnable, in Plymouth Harbour from the 7th of December 1871 until the 1st of January 1873. Here he was taught to read and write and do all those other tasks that schoolboys do, as well as a lot to do with being part of the Navy ship crew. Robert served on many other Royal Navy ships before being drafted to HMS Flora. By this time, the time he was drafted, he was being promoted from boy second class to boy first class, and then once he was an adult to ordinary seaman. In July 1876, whilst he was stationed in Plymouth on HMS Royal Adelaide, which is the flagship of the naval officer in command in Plymouth, and then he was promoted to able seaman. On the 9th of April 1879 he was drafted to HMS Flora, which at that stage was the guard ship at Simonstown. And he served in HMS Flora from the 9th of April 1879 to the 6th of January 1885. And during this time he was promoted in 1879 to leading seaman, and then later in 1879 to Petty Officer Second Class, 1881 Petty Officer First Class. 1885 he came on strength once again back on HMS Royal Adelaide back in Portsmouth. Basically what this proves is that he was in Simonstown in the right period for a relationship with Wilhelmina. I looked for a picture of HMS Flora. The best picture clearest picture I could find, not a very good one, was this one. I'm not sure where it was taken. Is it Simonstown? Doesn't look like Simonstown in the background, but it could very well be. I know that she was at Ascension Island in the 1860s. But what sort of ship was HMS Flora? Well, 5 ships in the Royal Navy have borne the name HMS Flora. The one that fits this story was built in Plymouth in 1844. HMS Flora was a 36-gun frigate, about 1,634 tons, and carrying a crew of 360 men. She was 160 feet long, 49 feet wide, and had a draft of 17 feet. She was viewed as being a harbour guard ship and was based in Simonstown from 1872 onwards. In 1879, while in Simons Bay, the Flora contributed 2 officers, but no ratings, to join the Naval Brigade, which took part in the Zulu War and the First Anglo-Boer War. And the surgeon from the ship, Mahoney, greatly distinguished himself by his courage and devotion to the wounded in the disastrous, for the British, Battle of Majuba Hill. In 1874 to 1879, the Flora acted as a receiving ship. That means it was a place where crewmen could spend their time before being drafted to their own from one ship to another. And in 1890-91, she acted as a store ship in Simonstown Harbour, being sold in 1891. And she was broken up on the Patent Slip here in Simonstown. The figurehead, which is shown in this picture, graced Admiralty House Gardens, later the RN headquarters at Youngsfield, and finally a reproduction was made and was placed in the South African Navy Museum. Flora House, which many of you might know and many of you might have seen, Flora Steps in Simonstown as you drive through towards Seaforth. The Flora House used the wooden beams from the HMS Flora as part of its construction. Here's a picture of HMS Flora, the ship on the right, and HMS Boadicea in Simons Bay. This is a picture I found in the Simonstown Museum. Now, with Robert Rouse's service record, we can make some judgments on who the father was of the children born to Wilhelmina Rouse. Violet Ann Napier, born on the 29th of December 1879. Well, Robert arrived in Simonstown only after she was born, so I would say he is not the father of this child. Robert William Napier, born 11th of December 1881 and died in 1889. On the burial card and in the burial register, but not the baptismal register, is given as Rouse. This Robert William was conceived sometime after May 1881, and so Robert Sr. could be the father. Richard Charles Rouse, born 11th of July 1883 and baptized on the 2nd of September 1883. Robert appears as the father in the baptism records, conceived about November 1882 and died 1915. Edwin John Rouse was born January 24th, 1885 and baptized the same year. Although Robert Rouse had departed Simonstown at the beginning of January 1885, the month in which Edwin was born, he is listed in the baptism register as the father. He would have been conceived in about March 1884. He married Maureen McKechnie, and he died on the 20th September 1958 in Pretoria. And he had 2 children, James Edwin born 1915, died 1996, and Clifford George, born 1918. No record of his death was found. Finally, Lucy Henrietta Rouse, born 8th of February 1888. The father is given as William Jawson. Robert Rouse had been out of Simonstown for nearly 3 years. Lucy married a William John Brand in 1912, but died very shortly afterwards, 25th of October 1913. But that same UK correspondent had also done some research. He found that the Robert Rouse he was interested in had married a Mary Rosina Hoskins in Plymouth in 1877. Robert's residence is given as HMS Vivid, while his service record shows HMS Royal Adelaide. After a bit of research, I found that HMS Vivid was the receiving ship in Plymouth, while I think all the administration was done from HMS Royal Adelaide. They were both base ships in Plymouth at the time. Notice on this marriage register that Mary Rosina Hosking is not able to write and had to just make her mark in the register. Not only do we have Robert Rouse with a wife in Plymouth, but 2 sons were born to this married couple in very short succession. First of all, Stephen George Rouse, born in the June quarter, 1878, and Robert J.J. Rouse, born in the June quarter, 1879. They are Robert John James and Stephen George Arnold, is it? And they were not baptized, however, until the 3rd of August, 1882. Why the delay? Was Mary Rosina, waiting for Robert Rouse to be back from his stint of duty at Simonstown? Was he, in fact, back in time? He married Wilhelmina Napier on the 27th of June, 1882. Could he be back in Plymouth by the 3rd of August, 1882, some 37 days later? But just knowing from my own time in the Navy, if he had come back on leave, would he have been booked off at HMS Flora and booked on in Plymouth again? So what is the answer? Does this mean there are 2 Robert Rouses in the Navy? How can we prove that there is only one? I think I found a way. Robert Rouse, if he is the one and the same person, had to sign on to the Navy as a boy, sign on again when he had finished his first 10 years, as he signed on till pension age. He also had to sign the marriage registers both in Simonstown and Plymouth. And so let's compare the 4 signatures and see if they are the same person. Top left-hand side, Robert Rouse is a 15-year-old boy sailor. Top right-hand side, 1877 is a 21-year-old bridegroom in Plymouth. 1882 is a 26-year-old bridegroom in Simonstown. 1885 as a 29-year-old signing on for 10 more years' service in the Navy. Do you think these signatures are by the same person? I certainly think signature 2, 3 and 4 look very similar. The R in 1877 and 1882 in the word Rouse, and certainly in Robert as well in 1885 signature. So the conclusion. In order to preserve privacy of Wilhelmina and her family, I can merely say that she's married again in 1892 and died in 1916 of kidney problems. So we won't carry on exploring Wilhelmina's family. Robert Rouse remained together with his wife in Plymouth. They moved to Edinburgh in 1905 after he'd left the Navy, and he died in 1934. The only member of the Wilhelmina Robert Rouse family who survived to bear children who might be carrying Robert Rouse's genes would be descendants of his son Ernest John Rouse, who died in Pretoria in 1958. And I suggested to my UK correspondent that we trace any living relatives of Ernest John Rouse's two sons, James Edwin and Clifford George, and he could do DNA on himself and the relatives and see if they have enough in common to indicate a close relationship, and thus prove that the Simonstown Robert Rouse and the Plymouth Robert Rouse were one and the same person. If you have other suggestions of how we can prove that this is the same person, why don't you email me at dpratt@mweb.co.za. dpratt@mweb.co.za, or add a comment to this video. Many thanks.